Hey there, welcome back to this particular video, and in this particular video we are going to talk about components and props in React. Now here on the screen you can see what all we are going to cover, alright, and this video is a part of the complete React series wherein we are learning React from scratch, from beginners to the advanced level, alright. So that's what we are doing, and in this video we are going to explore this particular topic, components and props. Now this is what we are going to talk about. So we are going to talk about what components are. We'll create our first components. We'll go hands-on with the components, props. What are multiple props? Like how can you manage multiple props in your application? How can you manage Boolean values and prop types? Destructuring with props, validations, props and arrays, how you can set up callbacks, and how you can make use of spread syntax with the props. All right. Now, this is going to be an essential video if you're planning to learn React. So be sure to follow this particular video till the very end. All right. And be sure to check out the link to the entire playlist in the description section of this particular video. This entire playlist has quite a few videos, and I'm updating these videos every now and then. So there are a lot more videos that are being added over here. They are scheduled and are being uploaded over here. So be sure to follow this particular playlist on this particular channel. And yes, if you are loving my work, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and do turn on the bell notification icon. That way you can stay updated with whatever I'm doing. Also, I have a link to the Telegram community in the description of this particular video. So feel free to join in there. I do post regular updates. I do conduct polls, gather feedback from the community as to what they want to learn next. So yeah, that's what the benefit of the Telegram community is. And you can stick to YouTube as well. That's completely fine. But for staying more connected, you can come over to Telegram as well. All right. And yeah, in the comment section, do let me know if you're following this particular course and any sort of feedback you might have. All right. Without a further ado, let's jump right in. All right. Hey there, welcome, and now it's time that we begin talking about what are components and how they work in React. So here I'm on the official website of React, which is react.dev, and we are going to analyze this website and understand and get introduced to this concept of components. All right. Now observe this website. Okay, you can observe any website, but I've taken this example because we are learning React, and this is the official one. Now, if you see at the top, there is a top bar over here. Okay, you can call it a header or the top nav bar or whatever you want. Now, within this, there is like logo on the left hand side, the version. Okay, you can see the search bar, the navigation items like learn, reference, community, blog, and some more options over here. Okay, you can scroll through the website. All right. Now, if you change the page over here, reference, community, learn, you can see this top bar remains as it is. It does not change, right? It's static throughout all the pages, and the same goes for the footer over here. Okay, so what I mean to say over here is, the point I'm trying to make is, whenever you're building any sort of web applications or any sort of software, there will be some components or some things in your application that would be same and it can be reused, right? Now, in traditional web development, what used to happen is, if you are building this kind of a website, you will create this page over here. You'll have this code written at the top, okay, to render this UI. Now, when you create the page for learn over here, this page, you'll again replicate this code, which creates this particular thing at the top, okay? If you're building reference page, you will build again this at the top. So this used to happen in traditional web development. Okay. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of repetition, right? Now, if you have to, tomorrow, if I have to make any sort of change in the top nav bar, I want to add one more option over here. So I have to remember to make changes in all the files. Okay. Wherever I have this top bar being used, right? And this was tedious, not easy, and it was not a good practice, right? Now, with the concept of reusability. Okay, so there is a concept of reusability, which means that you create things once and you reuse it multiple times throughout the life cycle of the application. So what the reusability means is you have this bar at the top created, a footer at the bottom created, and you can just reuse it on all the pages. Okay, that is what reusability means, right? And this is possible with the help of components in React. Okay, so what is a React component? So if you go to learn React over here, okay, so I have actually open over here. Okay, so you can see over here, a component is a piece of UI that has its own logic and its own appearance. Okay, it can be as small as a button or as large as an entire page. Okay, so let me put it this way: React components are the building block of any React application. Okay, what it is, it's a reusable piece of user interface or a UI that can be defined by the developer, and it allows you to reuse it at multiple places in the single application. So you can, for example, I gave you the example of this bar at the top. Okay, you create it once and you reuse it across the entire application. Okay, and it is independent. It has its own piece of code. Okay, if you want to make any sort of change, you have to just make the change in one file and it is reflected everywhere. That is the benefit of components. Okay, now you can see this is how you can create components. All right, now before I talk about this piece of code, let me tell you one more thing. Components in React can be created in two ways. One is by making use of functions, as you can see over here on my screen. Another way is by making use of classes. Now, classes, like if you explore any sort of latest code in React, you won't see much use of classes over there. So functions is what is being used at all the places. So that is what we'll be sticking to. And the components created using functions is known as functional components, right? So you can see this piece of code over here. It's a JavaScript function. You can see React components are JavaScript functions that return a markup, right? So here you can see this is a function, a JavaScript function which is returning JSX, the markup, right? And this is a very simple example of a component that is just a button. Okay, so you can see how it's returning this button, and you can make use of this button in your application. Okay, wherever you want to use it. Okay, so here you can see it is making use of this in my app over here, and it is rendering the button over here. Okay, now one thing you need to note over here, so it says it starts with a capital letter. Okay, so React component names must always start with a capital letter, while HTML tags must be lowercase. Okay, so you can see over here, okay, this is starting with the capital letter, right? So this is how components are created. Now here you have an editor as well to play around. Okay, you can see this is the button that has been created. Of course, this is all in the same file, app.js. You can have multiple files created. So for example, you can have button or mybutton.js created over here separately, and you can have my app.js where you're making use of a button. Okay, that also can be done, but here the example is demonstrating this in a single file over here. Okay, so here if you see my button, okay, and I can like reuse the button over here. So I can, if I want to, I can make use of it like 10 times or as number of times as I like. You can see, and if I want to make a change in the text over here, I have to make a change at one place, and I'm a button saying hello. Saying hello. You can see it got reflected in all the usages. You can see I was using it at multiple places, right? So you can see it's being reflected at all the places. So this is a benefit of components. Now imagine if you are not making use of component, you are actually taking this code button and you are actually rendering it this way 10 times. Tomorrow, if you want to make a change in the copy over here, or tomorrow if you want to update any sort of text or any sort of styling, you have to do it at all the places, right? And that is not good because, you know, it introduces a possibility of having errors in the application, because we are humans, right? We developers are humans. You might miss making a change at a particular place, right? And that would introduce any sort of errors in the application. So this is not recommended, but this way of components is recommended, right? And you can make use of it in your application, right? So what I would do is I would now, so since now we have some clarity about what React components are, okay, we would switch over to our application. I have this React application created, okay, with very simple app.jsx. Now here in app.jsx, here you would see I have a very simple, very simple greeting that I'm returning over here, right? And this is actually a component, okay? So if you see over here in main.jsx, I'm actually rendering app over here in root, right? And I'm importing app from app.jsx, and app is being exported over here. You can see, right? So yeah, this is an example of components as well. Okay, we are seeing the export. Oops, I missed the semicolon over here. I'll just add it. Okay, but you can see how this is working. You can also add components over here in this file itself. Okay, so what I can do is I can take this piece of code. I can create a button. Okay, so what I will do is I'll come over here. Okay, I'll add a button this way. Okay, I'm a button saying hello, and I can actually add a button. Okay, but before doing that, let me show you what the current output looks like. So current output says hello because there's no button involved right now. I've not saved the file yet. Okay, now I've created a button. I've said function my button. I'm a button and I'm saying hello over here. Okay, now I can come over here and I can say my button, something like this, and I'll close it, and you can see a button coming in over here, right? And I can just replicate this the way I want. Okay, so I can add n number of buttons as I like. You can see there are so many buttons being added, right? These are all buttons. And tomorrow, if I have to make a change in the UI, like I said, I have to make it at one place, right? And this all is coming in single file, right? I might want to modularize the code. So this is not a good practice to have multiple components in a single file. So what I should do is I will create a new file over here under src. I'll say my button .jsx over here. Okay, and I'll cut this code and I'll move it over here. Okay, something like this, and here I'm going to say export default, and I'm going to say my button over here, something like this, and over here I'm going to just get this imported. So the moment I press Control and space over here, okay, this line is imported. You can even type this line at the top. Okay, you are actually importing my button from this file over here. Okay, if you hold Control and if you hover on this, you'll see this gets converted into a link, and you can go to this file if you want to. All right, and if you save this, the output won't change, but the code is now much more modularized. Okay, so you have a component that you have created and you're using it in your application. All right, I hope this is making sense, and I hope this is useful. I hope you're getting the importance of how components are important. So this is a very simple example that I've demonstrated, but imagine like you're building a complex application where you're managing multiple user profiles, right? Now there could be multiple kinds of users, and you might want to display the profile information at different places in the app. So you can have a component, right? You can have a profile image component to display the profile image in a certain way, and you can reuse it at multiple times, at multiple places. For example, if you want to display profile image on the home screen, right? So you can use that component. Okay, if you want to display it in the edit profile page, you can display that use that component, right? So this is valid if you have any sort of custom requirement. So for example, normally profile pictures are displayed in a circle, right? Whenever you go to any application, profile pictures are displayed in a circle, right? So you might want to have a circle sort of a view wherein you are displaying the profile picture of the user. So you could create a component for that, and you can reuse it across the application wherever you want to display the image, right? And if there is any change in the UI tomorrow for displaying the profile picture, you make change in that one file and it's reflected across. It's so good and it's so useful, right? So I hope you have some good understanding of how components are important and building blocks of React application, and I hope this was useful. So it's time that we go hands-on and do some practice with components, all right? And here, what I have is a React application, which is rendering a portfolio of a developer. So you can see this application over here. Okay, it's a very simple app, but the problem with this application is everything is coming in or being rendered from a single file. So if I have to give you a gist over here, okay, let me scroll up. So, okay, this is app.jsx, which is being rendered by main.jsx in the root element. And within app.jsx, you are making use of this CSS file, and you have this function app that is being used over here. And within this, you have these variables. Okay, first we have these variables. And then what we are doing is we are returning this JSX that is making use of these variables, like the data stored in the variables. And we are rendering the data. So what we are going to do is we are going to modularize this and introduce some components over here. So that is going to give us some bit of hands-on practice with components. So first thing first, we are going to modify header over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here in src. I'm going to add header.jsx over here. Okay. I'll first create all the files. So header.jsx is what I'm going to need. I'm going to need about.jsx. Okay. I'm also going to need, you can say project list.jsx over here. I'm also going to need contact.jsx over here. And I'm going to need a footer in the end, which is footer.jsx. Okay. Now, to organize this better, I can introduce a folder over here and I can say components over here. Okay, and I can move all the newly created files that I just created into this particular folder. Okay, so this looks a bit clean, including about, contact, footer, header, project list. I've moved all. All right. Now what we are going to do is I'm going to come over here in app.jsx, and first we'll work on header.jsx. So I'll take this header section over here. Okay, this entire header section over here. All right. And I'm going to move this into the component. Okay, so what I'm going to do is here in header, what we need to do is I need to create first thing. I need to have a function statement. I'm going to say header, and here in the parameters, I don't need anything. Okay, and I'm going to return. All right, we need to return the JSX over here. So I'm going to return this part over here. I'm going to paste this. All right. Now, name and profession is missing over here. So what I need to do is I'll scroll up. I'll cut or get these two things over here. And I'll add name and profession over here. Something like this. Okay. So this is done. Okay. And yeah, this is it. I need to add an export statement over here. So I can say export default and I'll export header. Okay. Something like this. And this is it. Now over here in this particular file, I'll scroll down, and here in place of header section, I can say header. Okay, you can see this component and I can press enter. The moment I do that, so I need to make sure I self-close the tag as well over here. The moment I added that or selected that from the auto suggest, you can see this import statement being added at the top, which means that we are importing the component header over here. And okay, there's some problem. The app is not working as expected. Let me see what the issue is over here. So I'll just check the error here in the console. Okay, the error says profession is not defined at app.jsx26. Okay, I got the error, by the way. So we moved profession into header. Okay, and it's needed by in the app.jsx, I should say over here. You can see profession, and also I would say name is needed. Okay, so I'll just keep the variables over here. We'll delete these variables in the end. Okay, to avoid any issues. All right. And now if you come over here, you can see header is working absolutely okay. Okay, without any issues. So this is absolutely being rendered from here. You can see the header section. Okay, I'll just remove this comment now. Okay, and yeah. Or we'll stick to the comment. We'll remove it at the end. Okay. Now let us do the same with the about. Okay. Now I'll cut this about section over here. Okay. And for about, we have already created a file called about.jsx over here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a function about, no parameters, and I'm going to say return. Okay, and I'll paste this JSX, something like this. Okay, so this is done. Okay, and I'll just press tab for this. All right, so this is about, and I need to add export over here. So export default about over here, something like this. All right, I'll save this, and if you come over here, I need to import about like so. All right, this is done. And if you come over here, okay, we again see a problem. The problem is name and profession does not exist. So I need these two keys as well. So I'll take this keys, not take these variables over here, and I'll paste it over here. Okay. I'll save this, and you should see the output. You can see. So about is also being converted into a component. Okay. If you come over here, scroll down, about is done. We have projects. So I'll take the project section like this. I'll go over here. I'll add a function, something like this, projects or project list, something like this, no parameters, like so. And I'll just get the list of project also that we are defining over here, this list. Okay, so I'll add that list over here. Oops, so there is a problem. This should be a part of return statement, right? So it should be returned. So I'll just cut this. Something like this. Okay, so this is done. Okay, we are returning this JSX, and we have this projects defined at the top. All right, this is making sense. And I'll do export default, and I'll say project list over here, something like this. Okay, and here in app.jsx, I'll come over here, project section, I'll say project list, self-closing tag, and we'll see the list if it's being rendered in the right way. It is, right? We'll do the same for contact as well. Okay, it's pretty much the same stuff of moving this. Okay, so contact, I'll come over here, I'll say function contact, I'll get rid of this, and then I'll say return over here, like so, and then I have it done. Okay, and I'll say export default, and I'll say contact. Oops, so I'll say contact over here, like so. Okay, and you need to make use of contact over here. Okay, so I'll say contact, and yeah, footer also will do the same. I'll cut this. We'll go to footer.jsx, and I'll say function footer. Okay, and then I'll say return here, like so, and I'll have the footer done, and I'll add footer tag. Okay, so you're not seeing footer as an import over here because you have not exported. Okay, so I need to say export default footer. Okay, and then over here footer, you should see footer coming in over here. Okay, and done. We are done, right? Now if you come over here, everything should work absolutely okay. You can see. All right, we'll do a little bit of cleanup here in this particular file, so we don't need these variables. I'll get rid of them. Okay, and I'll get rid of the comments. Okay, so something like this. All right, and yeah, we're good. I'll just align this a bit. We're good now. You can see. So this is our app component now. Okay, which is having multiple other components like header, about, project list, contact, footer. And these are all individual components now, okay, that are being rendered or that are being created separately. All right, these are all individual components. And what is the takeaway over here? Okay, so tomorrow, if you want to add multiple components into a single project, that's absolutely possible. It's not like you can have single component in a React project or something like that. There is no such rule. You can have as many number of components you want, okay, and you can use it in this way. Now tomorrow, if I want to change the order over here, if I want to move about below project list, I can easily do it. You can see it's changed. I can do Control Z and I can bring it back to the original state, right? So this is possible, right? Also, one thing you remember, this is app over here is a component itself. And within this component, we are rendering other components. You can see app is a component in itself. And within this component, we are rendering other components like header, about, project list, contact, footer. So this is possible, right? And app itself is a component. It is being rendered over here. So if you go to main.jsx, it is being rendered over here in the root element over here, right? So root element in the main.jsx, what is being rendered? App.jsx, app component. And app component is rendering these many components in itself, right? So a component can render other components as well. That is perfectly valid. And there's no issue as such in that, right? So you can imagine how components are modular. So they allow you to bring in modularity into your code. They allow you to break down your entire application into small manageable parts. So tomorrow, if I want to make change in header, okay, header across the application, I have to just make change in with this one file. Okay. If I have to make change in the footer across the entire web application, I have to just make change over here. That is it, right? So it's modularity, reusability. Once the component is created, you can reuse it n number of times. You can reuse footer n number of times at any place you want, right? Maintainability, it's of course because of reusability, modularity, it enables you to maintain these components individually, separately. And also there is a separation of concerns is what I would say, because components help you organize the code by separating different things, right, into their own individual files, right? So it's an individual, it's a self-contained block is what I would say, right? So there is separation of concern wherein you have its own function. The component has its own function, its own JSX, its own interface in its own file itself, right? So it is self-contained, right? So yeah, this is about components in React. And one more thing I would want to mention, if you want to make use or reuse the component, you have to add this export at the bottom whenever you are creating this function this way, right? And that once you add the export, only then you will be able to import it this way in the file wherever you want to use it, right? So we didn't write this import because if I remove this, let's say footer, if I save this, I'll get an error. Of course, this is not going to work. And if you see the console, it is going to throw you the error. You can see footer is not defined. Now to bring in footer, you can type in this entire line of import, or what I suggest is I just press Control and space. Control and space on Windows, Command and space on Mac. You can see this suggestion, okay, with this import over here. You can see I'll select this, and the moment I select this, the import is automatically added at the top. There are no issues as such. If I save this, the application starts working again. You can see it's working again, right? So yeah, I hope this was pretty good, and I hope you have some good clarity as to how you can create multiple components and organize them within a single application. And I hope this gave you some insight as to how important components are when working with React. Welcome, and it's time that we talk about props in React. Now to demonstrate the same, I have this very simple application. So here, if you see, I have this main.jsx, which is rendering this app on the root element. And this is app over here, which is just rendering hello over here. So you can see hello as the output over here, right? Now let me create a scenario. Let's say you are building or showing user profiles, right? So you're building an application wherein you wish to show user profiles for different set of users, right? Now what I would do is I would create another component. Okay, I would call this as a profile card over here. Okay, .jsx over here. Okay, and inside this I'm going to have a function. I'm going to say profile card. Oops. So I'll say profile card over here. I'll get rid of the parameters. And over here, I'm going to return some JSX. Okay. Some interface we need to return. Now, what is the interface that we are returning? I'll keep it very simple. All right. I'll have a div. I'll have h2. Okay. I'll say name over here. Okay. We'll display name. And I'll say, or let's stick to name over here. Okay. We'll just stick to name right now. And of course, I'll add export over here, default, and I'll say profile card. Something like this. Okay. Now I need to make use of profile card over here. So what I need to do is I need to say profile card, something like this, and I'll get this imported. Okay. So you can see the import statement added to the top. I'll just collapse this so that we have some more room. And now if you come to the application over here, you can see name being displayed over here, which means that our component is being rendered successfully. Okay. Now we'll come over here. I need to show username over here, right? So what I can do over here is I can say constant. I'll create a variable. I'll say name and I'll call the name as Alice. Okay. So this is some JavaScript I'm writing and I'm going to make use of this JavaScript within JSX like this, and I'm going to say name. Okay. Now you're going to see name Alice over here. Okay. So for the sake of the convenience, I'll just change this to h3, something like this. Okay. So you can see name is Alice over here. Okay. So this is working fine. Now let's say our application expands and it's a multi-user application. Now you might want to make use of this profile card to display information of multiple users, right? Right now what we are doing is we are displaying hard-coded Alice over here. I don't want to do that. I want to keep it dynamic as possible. And there will be scenarios wherein we might get data from the backend. We might get data from the user input. We can get data from anywhere, right? So I should be able to have some sort of dynamicity into this particular component, which allows me to render this name based on what is passed or what is available, right? So how can we make this happen? So this is where the concept of props come in picture, right? So props in React, what are they? They are used to pass data from one component to another. So imagine this. What I mean by this is one component, this is another component, right? You want to make use of profile card in this component over here, right? Now, wherever you're using, you would have some sort of data, right? For example, I might make a API call over here. Let's say API call over here, and I might fetch the username from this server, right? So I'm fetching username from server, right? Now, I'm actually not doing this, but let's say I have an API call wherein I'm fetching the name of the user from the server using JavaScript, right? And I might want to make use of that name and I might want to display it with profile card, right? Profile card is the component that I want to make use of that. So how can I pass this name that I have got over here and display it with profile card? There is no way to do that, right? But with the help of props, you can do that. So you need to make use of props to enable this functionality, right? So what is happening over here is, understand this app over here is a parent component, which is rendering this child profile card. Why is profile card child? Because it is being rendered into app, and hence app is parent component and this is child component, right? So props in React are used to pass data from one component to another, specifically from a parent component to a child component. And with the help of props, props help make components more flexible and reusable, right? Right now we have hard-coded Alice over here. So of course you can only use this to display the information of Alice. Okay, but if I remove this hard-coded thing over here and if I make it dynamic, something dynamic over here, then this would enable me to make use of this profile card to display any sort of user information, right? Let me demonstrate this. So I'll get rid of this over here, okay, and I'll add a parameter over here. I'll say props, something like this, okay, and here I'll say props dot name, right? Now, where is this props coming from? So right now it won't display anything, okay, because we are not passing anything. So over here, I need to pass. So I need to say name is equal to, and I can say Alice over here, okay. So I can say Alice. You can see Alice, right? Now, if I duplicate this card, let me duplicate this card over here. I can say John, Okay, you can see John being rendered. So this is what I was talking about. This is the dynamicity that props add. Okay, without this, if you have hard coded Alice over here, okay, imagine this, you have hard coded Alice over here, okay, then this won't work. Okay, so I'm not hard coding right now, I'm not reverting my code. Okay, but if you hard code Alice over here, you can imagine like if I duplicate this profile card, I'll see Alice everywhere, right? Because it's hard coded. But right now what is happening is I'm dynamically passing this element over here, or I should say that, this property over here, and this is being used to display the information. All right, so yeah, this is what props are. So props is a short form for properties. Okay, and they are a way to pass data from one component to another in React. Okay, and they are used to make components more dynamic, more reusable by passing different values as input to the component. Right, so instead of hard coding name and all the other sort of information inside the component, you can pass them as props. Okay, one more question I would like to address, which you might be thinking, okay, I said I will have the user information available in this component, right? Because I'm making an API call, or I might make a call to the database over here, right? Now the question you might ask is, instead of using props, what if I move the API call from here to here, right? That's a very good question, but I'll tell you something. Okay, if you're doing this, you don't need to use props, right? Because you have the user information over here, you can fetch it and display it over here. Okay, but let me tell you here, if you're hard coding the API call, then what you're doing is you are defining like how this particular component is fetching data. Okay, you might not want to do that because depending on the scenario, you might fetch the information from different places. So for example, if here you are displaying the profile information, you are fetching the data from the server, let's say. If you are using this profile card in some other file and there you want to display the information from the database, so you might have, instead of API call, you might have a database call over here or some sort of other call over here. Okay, so the data fetching is completely decoupled over here from the component. Okay, if you start hard coding data fetching into the component, it will be restricted. So here we have bought the data component out, like the fetching part out. Okay, data fetching is outside the component and we are just passing the data that we retrieve into the component. So the component just focuses on rendering the information. I hope this is useful and I hope you are able to get a sense of this. Now, a couple of things that you need to keep in mind about props is the flow of the props. So props are passed from a parent component to a child component. I already discussed what parent component is. Parent component in our case is app over here. So in this case, it will be passed from parent to child. So which means app to profile card, because profile card is being rendered inside app. So profile card is child component, right? So this is how the flow would work. So this is the flow of props from parent to child. Another point I want to talk about is immutability. Okay, so props are read only. This is something that you need to remember. Props are read only, meaning child components. So whatever props you're passing in, child components cannot modify the props that they receive. Instead, the parent controls the data and passes it down as needed. All right. So if you try to modify props over here, let's say, so if I try to say props dot name over here is equal to test, for example, if I try to save this, the output would disappear. And if you head over to the console over here, if you scroll up, you can see cannot assign to read only property. Okay, and you are trying to modify this. That is what it's trying to say. Okay, if you get rid of this line, the error will disappear. If I save this, you can see the output is there and the error has disappeared. You can see, right? So yeah, props are immutable. They are read only. They cannot be modified by child components and they rely on parent component to pass the data to them, right? So I hope this is useful and I hope you have been able to follow along. So I have this example wherein we are rendering the profile card by passing in name as the prop over here, and we are displaying the name like this in the profile card, and we are seeing name being rendered over here onto the interface. Now, it might seem, looking at this example, that we are passing only one prop over here. So what is the possibility? Okay, so I would want to show you and tell you that you can pass in multiple props as well. Okay, so I can say 23 and I can say age is 42, for example. Okay, so here I'm passing one more prop over here, which I can display over here. Okay, so I can say age and I can say age over here. Okay, something like this. And if I come over here, you can see Alice and John, okay, with their respective ages. Okay, so this is completely possible wherein you can pass in multiple props to a child component. Now, in our example, age that we are passing in over here is being passed as a string. There will be a scenario wherein you might want to pass the data as integer or number. So what you can do in that case is you can say num over here. I'll pass another parameter. I'll say num as 2 over here. Okay, or let me pass it as string. Okay, I'll pass at one place at string and another place over here this way. Okay, so this is how you can pass as a number. Okay, this is not a string. Okay, and over here let me try out something. So I can say const sum is equal to props dot num plus 1. Okay, and I'll display the data over here. Okay, so over here you can say num is, so I don't need this, so I'll say sum over here. Okay, now if you come over here, you can see num is 21 over here, which means so 2 plus 1, it became 21 because it was being passed as a string over here in this case. Okay, in the second example, we have passed it this way, and here it is being displayed as 3, which means it is being passed as an integer. All right, so I hope this is making sense how you can work with data and pass in multiple props into a single component. All right, I hope this has been useful. Now let us talk about how you can make use of booleans when working with props. So here in our example, okay, we have a profile card which we are displaying. I'm passing in two strings and a number. All right, and I'm displaying this number in this way with the help of calculations. So I'll get rid of this display for the number. We don't need it. Okay, and I'll also get rid of num over here. Okay, so now let's talk about Boolean. Okay, so let's say I want to pass a Boolean prop. I'll say is member over here. Okay, and I'll say true over here. Okay, and I'll pass a similar thing over here as well. Oops, I need to close this over here. Okay, I'll pass in is member and I'll say false over here. Something like this. Okay, now I'm passing Boolean over here, okay, but this is being passed as a string. Okay, let me show it to you. So if I duplicate this, okay, and if I say is member over here, is member, okay, something like this, props dot is member. Okay, now if you see over here, true and false, this is being printed as a string. Okay, now to pass it as a Boolean over here, I need to like remove these round brackets over here. Sorry, these inverted commas, and I need to add the curly brace. Okay, this is the same for integers as well. Now if I save this and if I come over here, you'll see you're not able to see the Boolean values. Okay, so what is the purpose of passing in the Boolean values? So Boolean values are used for decision making. Okay, so let's say you want to showcase or you want to show a message depending on whether the user is member or not. So you can make use of this Boolean is member over here and you can display that. Okay, so let me show that to you. So I can say status over here. Okay, status, and if you take a look at the status now, there's nothing because it's a Boolean value. So I can say if so I can make use of ternary operator actually over here. Okay, so I can say props is member, then if this is true, then I would be saying active member, else I would be saying guest over here. Something like this. Okay, I save this and you can see active member and guest. So Alice is active member because we passed in true for Alice over here. You can see Alice was true. And John is not an active member. So you can see guest over here because we passed in false. Okay, if you want to make this also true, you can pass in true like this. Oops. So I'll select this, save this, and you can see active member. Okay. If I revert, you'll see John is guest. Okay. So this is how you can make use of Boolean values within props. So props accept Boolean prop member. Okay. And it allows you to manage the state inside the component. So if you want to add some sort of conditional display or anything like that, you can make use of Boolean props. All right. And how do you pass it? You pass it within a pair of curly braces and not in inverted commas like this. This is a way to pass a string over here. All right. So I hope this is useful. So let's start talking about props destructuring. So here I have an example wherein I have this app component which is making use of profile card twice, right? You can see it's rendering profile card twice and it is passing in this data over here, and this data is being passed in the form of props, and this profile card component is using this data with the help of dot notation. So you can see how it's using it. Now what I mean by dot notation is this data that you're passing in from here, name, age, is member, these attributes are being passed in the form of object over here. Okay, so props becomes an object and you can access whatever is being passed with the help of dot notation, which means using this dot over here, right? So you can say props dot name, props dot age, and props dot is member. This way of accessing things is known as dot notation, and we are able to make use of dot notation over here because props here is an object. Okay, it's in JavaScript object, right? Now in JavaScript, it's common to make use of destructuring, right? And when you're making use of props in React, destructuring is commonly used to make code cleaner and more readable. Let me give you an example. First, I'll just give you a review of what destructuring is. So think of it this way. Okay, you have a JavaScript object over here. Okay, this is not React. This is simple JavaScript that I'm writing over here. Okay, I'm saying name John. Okay, and it has two things in it. Okay, it has name and age. Okay, so the age is 30 over here. Okay, now one way of extracting the data from this object is one way of unpacking, okay, is you can say name person dot name over here. Okay, this is one way. Okay, so this is without destructuring. Okay, and using dot notation, right? That is what you're using. Okay, you can say age over here and you can say person dot age. This is one way of doing things, right? Another way of doing things is with the help of destructuring. Okay, with destructuring. How would you do it? So you can say const. Okay, you can say name comma age over here. Okay, and you can assign it person. Oops. So this would unpack all the values that exist in the person object and it will assign it to both these variables. Now I'm getting an error because this is redundant, right? Name and age is already created. So I'll just comment this out. Okay, so that we don't see the error. But you get a sense, this is destructuring wherein you are unpacking person into name and age, right? And what is name and age? Name and age are attributes you can see over here within the object over here. So we unpacked the properties that existed within this object. Okay, you can see this got unpacked. Now this is known as destructuring. It's a better syntax as compared to this one. Okay, this is also doable. Okay, you can do this, but this is not that readable. It's a bit lengthy and cumbersome process, right? Now I said this is being passed in as the object. Okay, and these are all the properties over here. So here, if you see, you have props, you have props.name, props.age. So name, age, is member are nothing but properties. So you can also apply the similar destructuring pattern over here. Okay, and to do that, what you would do is you can get rid of this over here. Okay, we can make use of the similar syntax, right? You need these curly braces. So I'll copy this, paste it over here, and here I can have name, age, and I have one more is member, something like this. Now, the moment I do this, I don't need to access all these attributes, all these properties, not attributes, all these properties using dot notation. So I can get rid of dot name, dot age, and dot is member over here. Okay, I'll save this, and this also can be saved, and you'll see there's no change in the output. There won't be any errors also. Okay, it's all good, right? So this is what JavaScript destructuring is, and I believe you're familiar with JavaScript destructuring, okay, but this was just a refresher. So I hope you understand what this is and how this is used for props destructuring. Now, remember, destructuring in JavaScript is a convenient way to extract values from arrays or objects into variables, right? It is very frequently used, and it is the term that is used is destructuring allows you to unpack. So unpacking is the term that is being used everywhere, right? So here, what we are doing is we are actually unpacking the props, right? We are unpacking the props into the individual variables over here. Okay, and we are making use of those variables inside the component, right? So here directly variables are being used, and this is much more readable rather than making use of dot notation, right? So when you're working with React components, this kind of a syntax you'll see a lot, wherein the attributes are being passed in this way, properties are being passed in this way, and here they are being destructured in this way. So don't get confused. This is normal object destructuring with JavaScript. Okay, so the concept of JavaScript is being used over here. All right. So I hope this is useful, and I hope you have been able to follow along. Let's start talking about prop validations and how it can be used to validate the properties that you're passing. All right, so I have this component over here, app, which is making use of profile card twice, and we are passing in some props over here, you can see, and this prop is being destructured over here by us, and we are making use of the destructured data inside the component over here, right? Now, let me give you a scenario. Here, we are passing in age, and we are passing in age as a string, right? Now, there's no sort of validation as such, okay? There's no sort of validation that we are doing right now that can help us highlight to a developer or whoever is using this particular component that, hey, age is supposed to be a number and not a string, right? So right now we are not getting any sort of errors. We are all good, but there will be scenarios wherein you have designed a component and you would want whoever is working on that component or reusing that component in their file, they should pass data in a certain way, right? Because normally what happens is in a team, you are working on one component, you're writing one component, and that component is being used by n number of developers. How do you communicate that? So that is where prop validation comes into picture. Now, with the help of PropTypes, PropType is a tool that can be used for validating the props that is being passed or that a component receives. Okay, so with the help of PropTypes, you can catch bugs early during the development when the data is being passed, ensuring that the correct type of data is being passed to the component. And if a component receives the props that do not match the expected types, React will issue a warning in the console in the development mode. All right. So this is something to know, and let us see how you can add validations. So what I would do is first we would need to make use of an import statement. So I'll say import PropTypes. Okay, I'm writing this in profile card.jsx, and I'll say PropTypes over here. Okay, so I'm making this import statement at the top. Now what I would do is here I would write in the validation that I need to have. So to add validation, what we would do is over here, we would say profile card. Okay, this is the name of the component. We would say dot, and I would say prop types of something like this. Okay, and then I'm going to open a pair of curly braces. Okay, I'll end this with a semicolon. And over here, I'm going to write validation, whatever I want to have. So I can say name. For name, I need to say prop types dot string. Okay. So this is one. Okay, I can say for each PropTypes dot let's say number. We want it to be number, right? So I'll say number. Okay, and for is member, okay, I'll say PropTypes, and I'll pass in dot bool over here. Okay, and I'll pass in a comma. Okay, I have not saved this file yet, but before saving, I want to show you that we are passing in string right now, and we are not getting any sort of errors, right? So here, if you see from app.jsx, we are passing in string for each. We are not getting any errors on the console. The moment I save this, and if I come over here, you're going to see these warnings over here. Failed, prop type, invalid, prop age of type string supplied to profile card, expected number. Okay, so you get these sort of warnings in the development mode only when you are making use of prop types validation. Okay, now what will happen is if a developer is making use of profile card component, let's say profile card component is developed by you, and I as a developer, I'm your teammate, and I'm making use of this profile card, and I happen to pass age as 23, which is a string. Okay, it would just start throwing warnings onto the console, and the developer, like I'm the developer in this case, I would know that, hey, I'm not supposed to pass it as a string, but instead I'm supposed to pass it as a number. Okay, now I can change this to number also over here. Okay, and the warning will go away. So I can say 23. If I save this, I'm still getting an error. Okay, because I've changed only at one place, right? So I need to make a change here also. I'll just save it. Okay, and now you'll see there is no error as such. Okay, so it's all sorted. Now, one more thing I want to talk about is if I don't pass is member, let us see what happens. Okay, so if I skip is member, you'll see there's no issue as such, right? So you can see there's no issue, right? Am I getting any sort of error that I'm supposed to pass is member? No, right? So you can add a validation for that as well. So if any sort of prop is mandatory, okay, you can add that sort of validation, asking the user to pass the value for that particular prop. Okay, so here bool, I can say dot, and here I can say is required. You can see if I save this, if I come over here, you will see the prop is member is marked as required in the profile card, but its value is undefined, right? So earlier I was not passing in this prop and I was not getting any sort of error, but now I have to pass this compulsorily. Okay, it's mandatory. There's no escape. And if I save this and if I do a refresh, you'll see the error go away. All right. So I hope this is clear as to how the props validation work. Now, remember, this errors that you're seeing will be shown in the development mode, and these will be shown as warnings, okay, onto the browser console, which will help developers rectify the issue and address them. All right. So that is what prop types are for. Okay. So this means you want a string. This means you want a number. This means you want a Boolean as well as it is required. Okay. Age and name are optional, but is member is required. Okay. You can make these also required over here by passing in this over here. Okay. If you add is required, then it means that age is also required and it is not optional. All right. So depending on your requirement, you can add these sort of validations and get things done. All right. I hope you have been able to follow along, and I hope this was useful. So let's start talking about how can you make use of arrays as props over here. So we have this component app, which is making use of profile card twice over here. And I have this profile card, which is restructuring the props that I'm getting. I'm displaying the props, and I have some validation for the props over here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is let's say I wish to display the hobbies over here. Okay. And hobbies can be multiple. Okay. So what I would want to do is I would want to have hobbies being stored in the form of arrays over here. Okay. So let us say I have hobbies. Okay. So I can say const hobby1. Okay. I can say hobby1, and I can have array of this sort. Okay, something like this, and I'll say reading, and I'll just have two hobbies for now. Cooking. Okay, I'll pass in this. Okay, and what I can do over here is I can add a prop over here, hobbies, and I can pass in this. I can say hobby1. All right, so this is being passed now, and what I need to do is I need to make use of it over here. Okay, so I can say hobby over here. Okay, and yeah, I get the hobby over here. Okay, hobbies, it won't be hobby, it will be hobbies because you're passing it as hobbies over here. Okay, so I got hobbies. Now what we need to do is we need to display the hobbies. All right, so first thing first, I'll come over here. I'll say h3 or h3 hobbies. Okay, and over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm going to add an unordered list. Okay, ul, and then over here I'm going to have some JavaScript written. Okay, so I'm going to say hobbies dot map. So I'm going to make use of map method over here. Okay, hobbies dot map, and I'm going to say hobby. I'm going to have two parameters over here. Okay, so just in case you don't know what I'm doing, I'm making use of map over here, and I'm making use of map to iterate essentially over each element in the hobbies array. So hobbies is a array over here that I've received. Okay, I'm passing it as an array. You can see here, right? It's an array. Okay, now I need to iterate over it and display it to the user. So arrays in JavaScript. So this is JavaScript, and arrays in JavaScript have this amazing method called map, which you can make use of, right? So I'm making use of hobbies.map. Now what map does is it iterates over each element in the hobbies array, or whichever array you are using it with. So right now the array in question is hobbies. I'm saying iterate over each element in the hobbies array, and what you do is for each element in the array, execute this arrow function. So I have this arrow function that you see. So I'll just cut this. Okay, this is map. Okay, now within this, I'm pasting this arrow function. Can you see? Okay, this is the arrow function that I'm making use of. And this arrow function is what will be applied or executed. And it is going to return a new value. Okay, so this is taking in two parameters, this arrow function, hobby and index. Now hobby is the individual or the current element in the hobbies array during each iteration. So it is representing the current element during each iteration. For example, if our hobby list is reading and cooking, so first hobby will be reading and then it will be cooking, and the corresponding index will be passed over here. Okay, so what I would do is I would return something over here. Okay, so whatever you are adding over here is returned. So I'll create an li element over here. Okay, and I'll say key is equal to, I'll add index over here, and hobby will be added over here. Something like this, like so. Okay, so what we did is we added this function over here, and this function basically is executed for every element in the array. Okay, it has two parameters. One is the current element in the hobbies array during each iteration. It is called hobby. And then we have index. This is the index of the current element in the array. Okay, and what happens is after this function is executed, a value is returned, and the value that is returned in this case is this markdown. Okay, or this JSX code that we are returning over here. Now what this is happening, what this is doing is this is li. Okay, so it's a list that is being constructed. It represents a single list item. Okay, and I have this key over here. Okay, now key prop is being added over here with the value of index. So for the first element, the key will be 1. For the second element, the key will be 2. Sorry, the first element, for the first element, the key will be 0. Okay, and for the second element, key will be 1, and so on. Okay, because indexes start with 0, of course, right? Now, why do we add this key over here? Okay, so adding this key is one of the best practices. whenever you're working with lists in React, right? Or whenever you are rendering arrays in React. So this is very important because the usage of key over here is being done to efficiently manage the rendering of list. Okay. And this key helps React keep track of each list item and update only the ones that need the changes when the list changes. So if there is any changes in the list or the array over here, okay, based on this key value, it will do a hot update. Okay, because it needs to perform an update, right? If there is any change in the value, it does an instant reload. So based on the key value, depending on how this key is being assigned and rendered onto the interface, the hot reload will be done. So basically from the optimization standpoint, React needs this key, and it's important to include this whenever you are rendering an array, okay, or a list, I should say. Okay, so this is what we have done. And if you come over here, okay, we are not seeing any sort of output. Why so? Okay, so so I'm getting an error over here, 11, okay, and cannot read properties of undefined. All right, it's because I'm passing in this for only probably one component and not the other one. So if I save this, I should ideally see the output over here. You can see the output I'm seeing. Okay, now I'm not seeing hobbies being shown over here. Okay, hobbies are not being shown. Okay, hobbies are not being rendered, in fact. Okay, so let us see why the hobby is not being rendered. So I think I got the problem here. We are just crafting this li, but we are not returning it. So we need to add a return statement over here. Okay, and the moment we add the return statement, let me save it over here. I'll also close this with a semicolon, okay, and I'll save it. And if you come over here, you'll see reading and cooking being shown. Okay, ignore the interface. All right, it's not looking that pretty, but I hope I'm able to communicate the concepts that we are learning about. All right, so here you can see hobby one being passed. Okay, what you can do is I'll directly cut this. Instead of making use of a variable, I'll just get rid of this over here. Okay, and over here, what I can do is I can simply paste the hobby. Okay, so here I can have reading and hiking. Okay, and swimming. So first one has reading, cooking, another one has swimming and hiking. And if you see over here, reading and cooking and swimming and hiking. Okay, so it's properly being displayed. This is absolutely great over here. Okay, now here what we are doing is we are passing in the array of string over here, right? The array of string is being passed. Now you can add some sort of validation over here if you wish to. Okay, so here I'll come to PropTypes and I can add validation. Let's say I wish to have hobbies as the array of string only. I don't want any other type come in hobbies. Okay, so what I can do is I can say hobbies over here. Okay, colon, I'll say PropTypes, something like this, dot array of over here, and over here I can say PropTypes dot, I can say string, something like this. So this is a syntax that you need to follow. Okay, we're saying PropTypes array of, and we are saying it should be string. All right, and this ensures that hobby is an array of strings always. So if I save this and if I come over here, okay, if I refresh, you will see that there are no errors as such. Okay, but if I change this to that of number, and if I come here, you can see invalid prop type provided a type of number. You'll see rendering happening over here. Nothing is stopping from rendering, but a warning is issued. Okay, that is what the benefit is of the validation that we are doing. All right, so yeah, I hope this is useful, and I hope you have been able to follow along as to how you can make use of arrays with props in React. Now it's time that we begin talking about callbacks. Now, what are callbacks? So callbacks are functions that are passed as arguments to other functions and are executed after a particular task is completed. Now, that particular task could be anything like a sort of rendering operation or a sort of asynchronous operation like API call or something like that. Okay, so I'll show you how we can make use of callbacks in this example. So here, what I have done is I have this app component that you're seeing here. Okay, this is the entire app component, which is making use of profile card over here. Okay, and profile card is the component over here. Okay, it is rendering some data, some props that it's getting from the parent component. And I have added some CSS just to beautify this interface over here. So you will see a little bit beautiful interface, a decent interface. Okay, presentable. I won't say it's too good, but it's presentable is what I would say. All right. And if you come over here, this is the CSS I've added for the same. It's there in the app.css file. Okay, it's very simple CSS, pretty straightforward. And I've got the job done by adding a couple of classes as well, like app container over here and the profile card over here. All right. Now coming to the topic of callbacks. Okay. So let us say I want to add a on-click listener on hobbies, and this on-click listener will bring in a alert. Okay. And I want to know which hobby has been clicked. I want to show it to the user. Okay. So functionality is simple. Okay, it could be more complex, but I'll just stick to the simple functionality. All right. Now what I would do is I would have a function defined, right? First of all, so within app, I'll say, let's have a function. So here you can say const handle hobby click over here. Okay, and I'll have a parameter. Okay, over here. I'll make use of arrow function and I'll say alert. Okay, something like this. And here I'll say you clicked on, I'll say $hobby. Okay, hobby, something like this. Okay, so this is a function that I have created, and I want this function to be triggered whenever a hobby is clicked. Okay. Also, I'll just align this. So this has become fairly long, I would say. Okay, it's going off the screen. So I'll just align this in a better way. Okay, so you can see this over here. Okay, I'll get name over here. Age is member, hobbies. Okay, so this is now readable, and it is not going off screen now. All right. So now what I need to do is, what I can do, I can pass this particular function as a callback to this particular component. Okay, how? With the help of props. All right, so I can come over here. Okay, and I can press enter, and I can say on hobby click. That's the name of the prop. I can have this JavaScript syntax, and I can say handle hobby click, something like this. Okay, and I can pass it for this as well over here, something like this. Okay. So yeah, I've passed both the, so for both the components that I'm rendering, both the profile cards, I am passing in this as a prop. Now over here in the profile card, what I need to do is I need to get on hobby click over here. Okay, something like this. Okay, now what I'm going to do over here is here I need to add a listener in the li element when we are rendering the li element. All right, so what I can do over here is after key like this, I can say on click over here, and I can have equal to. Okay, and I'll add this, and I'll add a function, arrow function, and I'll say on hobby click over here, and I'll pass in the hobby that I have. Okay, so I hope this is making sense. Okay, so what we are doing is we are adding a on click listener over here. We have access to the hobby. So with the help of this map is iterating over the hobby array, right? And for every iteration, these two things have the current hobby and the index. So I'm passing in this hobby over here. Okay, whenever the click event is being triggered, and I'm calling the on hobby click. What is on hobby click? It is coming in as prop over here. And what is coming in as prop over here? This thing is coming in, this function. Okay, and what will happen is this thing that we are passing in as the parameter over here. Okay, let me take this also to the new line, something like this. Okay, So this thing that you're getting on this thing that you're passing in as a parameter hobby will be passed in over here. Okay, over here to this function, and this alert will be triggered. Okay, let us see this in action. I'll save this code. I'll come over here. Oops. So you see swimming on click, hiking on click. There's some problem in the rendering. So over here, if you see on click hobby, oops, we did a mistake. So I'll just cut this. Okay, I'll just cut this. Okay, and so I accidentally added this at a wrong place. Okay, so it should be over here. Okay, here, something like this. Now let me take this at a new line. Okay, it should be after key, and then this closing tag over here for HTML, and then we are rendering the li like so. Okay, I hope this is making sense now. Okay, so how it worked is li tag has two attributes. One is key, another one is on click. You can see, and then we are closing this tag here. We are rendering the hobby, and then we are closing the li tag. Okay, I hope this is making sense. And if you come over here, I'll do a refresh. You clicked on cooking. Okay, you clicked on hiking. You clicked on swimming. You clicked on reading. So you can see how callback is in action. Okay, now this can be, so here we have passed into a component. We've passed this as a prop to the component. Okay, you can pass this to any, like normally callbacks are used to be triggered. They are supposed to be triggered when an asynchronous operation or any sort of rendering is being completed. Okay, so in that kind of scenarios, you can make use of callback. So let's say you have an API call. What you can do is you can pass in this function as a callback. And once the API call is done, depending on a certain operation or a certain event, you can trigger the callback like we are triggering over here. All right. So this is the function defined in the parent component being triggered from an element in the child component with the help of onClick listener. All right. So I hope this has been clear, and I hope you are able to follow this along. Now let's talk about how you can make use of spread operator when working with React and passing in props over here. Okay. Now spread operator is a JavaScript concept. Okay. And we'll see how we can apply it over here. Now what is happening over here is I have this app component. Okay. Which has this function created. Okay. This function handle hobby click within the app component. And I'm passing in this handle hobby click along with some other props over here to profile card, and I'm rendering profile card over here. Okay, and profile card is a very simple card that renders this information in the UI. All right, it has some validations too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the props in the profile card with the help of spread operator. All right, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create an object with all these values. Okay. Now these props are being passed to the profile card, okay, and these are props of different users, right? So these are properties in a way for representing Alice and John, right? So what we can do is we can get these props converted into objects over here, okay? So what I would do is here I would say const, I would say Alice profile, okay, I'll say Alice profile over here, and I would add these as objects over here. Oh, sorry, as properties. Okay, so here I'm constructing an object. Okay, I don't need this curly brace. Okay, and here then I'll have is member. Okay, something like this. I don't need true. Something like this. I'll have hobbies, and I'll get rid of these curly braces. This was needed in JSX, but not over here. Okay, I'll have comma, and I'll add this over here. Okay, and yeah, I'm still getting error, I know, and the reason for that is it should be key value pairs and not equal to. Okay, so I'll I'm messing up with the keyboard. Okay, so I'll just copy this. Okay, I'll just copy this and I'll paste it away. So yeah, something like this. Okay, And yep. So this is what Alice profile looks like. Okay, so we are passing in the data for the Alice over here. Okay, we need to do the same for John as well. So I'll cut this. Okay, cut this over here. I'll come over here. Okay, this is done. I'll say const John profile. Okay, and here let's have this. Okay, first thing first, I'll get this over here with a comma. Okay, and we need to format this a bit. Okay, so 42. I don't need the curly braces. Those were needed for JSX. And I'll add colon. Okay, comma. And here again, I'll add a colon. And these curly braces are not needed. Okay, I'll add comma. And this will be colon. The curly braces are not needed. And then I'll align this. Okay, so this is done. All right, we have John profile and we have Alice profile. Now what we can do is we can come over here. Okay, in the profile card. Okay, we need to pass these as props, right? This object as props. What I can do is I can add a curly brace. I can say 3 dots and I can say Alice profile over here. And over here, I can say 3 dots and I can say John profile. I can save this. Now, if you take a look at the output, okay, it hasn't changed. There is no change in the output, no errors as such. Okay, everything is same. It's just that we have made things a bit more better, where we are creating profiles first for every member. Okay, what all we want to pass, and we are passing in that using the spread operator to this particular component. So the spread operator is used to pass all the key value pairs in the object as props to the profile card component. And this way, instead of listing each prop manually, you spread the object and the component receives the corresponding value as props. All right. Slight benefits over the older approach. Okay, many people would prefer the older approach as well, but some benefits here is cleaner code. Okay, you are reducing the repetition and basically you have objects created now. Okay, based on what data you want to pass. Now, this object we are constructing on the fly, right? We are hard coding all the values. There will be scenarios wherein you will get this object right from the API. Okay, you get some data from the API, you convert it into this object sorts, and then you pass it this way to the props. To the component in the form of props. Okay, so don't get confused with this kind of a syntax. It's one and the same. All right, it does the same job. It's just the different ways of doing things. Okay, this is very useful if you're getting some data from an API call or a database call, and then you have it in the form of objects. Okay, so rather than constructing the entire props manually over here, you just make use of spread operator and pass it, because you are already getting it in the form of objects, right? So I hope this is useful and I hope you have been able to follow along.